Okay, Kierkegaard, Works of Love, Part 2, Chapter 3. Love hopes all things, yet is never put to shame. He starts off with a quote from 1 Corinthians 13:7. Love hopes all things. In this chapter, Kierkegaard begins by talking about how life takes on a poisonous air when eternity is forgotten, but how the one who is very much concerned with eternity, the one who wills what is good in truth, seems to be, from a worldly perspective that is only concerned with temporal matters, a fool, or one who has wasted their life because they do not see any reward for their labors, while those who are unconcerned about eternal matters are getting on just fine in the world and seem to have made the more judicious decision in regard to life. It is at this point that Kierkegaard says that Christianity comes with true insight that puts this apparent unjustness of the world into context. Christianity procures vision through its parable of earthly life as the time of sowing and eternity as the time of reaping. Christianity procures vision through the aid of its picture of this life as a life of tribulation, of striving, and the eternal, the life of victory. Christianity procures air and vision, procures dignity and festivity for life by presenting in picturesque language the superiority of the eternal, in which it shall be eternally decided who won the wreath of honor and who was put to shame. Christianity reveals that this life is a time of testing and examination, not a time for frivolity and selfish ambitions. It is not in this life where it will be determined who was victorious and who was not. It is in eternity where this will be decided. Here is where the real elevation of a man is decided. Will you, without certainty, give up everything you desire for something your conscience tells you is true, even though it will cost you your life, the only thing you know with certainty? This is the test of life. Will you be what God desires, even if it costs you everything? Or will you be your own God and glorify yourself? Even if a man did win honor meritoriously here in the world, what dignity does the world possess to confer significance? Here he's just saying that the world is so devoid of honor that even when it does bestow honor on someone, it means nothing, because the world is completely lacking in dignity. To relate oneself expectantly to the possibility of the good is to hope, which therefore cannot be some temporal expectancy, but rather an eternal hope. To relate oneself expectantly to the possibility of evil is to fear. The possibility of the good is the eternal. In the differentiation, and the choice is indeed differentiation, the possibility of the good is more than possibility, for it is the eternal. This is the basis of the fact that one who hopes can never be deceived. For to hope is to expect the possibility of the good, but the possibility of the good is the eternal. The future is uncertain, and we do not know what it possibly could hold for us. We could expect good or evil in the future. If we expect good, we hope. If we expect evil, we fear. He says that true hope is not desire or longing in a worldly sense for the innumerable things you could possibly have in this life, but that to truly have hope is to believe in the possibility of the good, and the good is the eternal. God is the eternal, and God is the true good. And it is worth noting that by God, Kierkegaard always means the God and Father of Christ, because it is with the nature of the true God that true good exists. What I think Kierkegaard is saying is that to truly have hope is to truly believe and trust in God, and thereby believe that what is truly good awaits those who put their trust in Him. In this life, there can seem to be no correlation between the integrity of people's lives and the good or evil they experience. So we are all presented with a choice as to what this life ultimately amounts to. Is it just empty meaninglessness, totally based in chance? Or does it ultimately have a good purpose despite what we constantly see? He says that the possibility of the good is the eternal, and therefore the one who trusts in it can never be deceived, because the eternal is indeed the truth. In truth, everyone who does not understand that the whole of life shall be a time of hope is in despair. No matter, absolutely no matter whether he is conscious of it or not, whether he thinks himself fortunate in his presumed well-being, or whether he wears himself out in tedium and trouble. Every person, the most fortunate to the most unfortunate, shall have hope in the eternal throughout their life, because every person could die at any moment. The person who does not do this separates themselves from God, the eternal, and thereby forfeits eternity. If the eternal were to lay out the task for a man all at once, and on its own terms, without regard for his poor capacities and weaker powers, man would despair. In possibility, the eternal is continually near enough to be at hand, yet far enough away to keep man advancing towards the eternal, on the way, in forward movement. In this way, the eternal lures and draws a person, in the possible, from cradle to grave, if he just chooses to hope. Yeah, this section is a bit difficult to understand, but I think he's saying that God intends to teach us to hope by revealing himself enough in life for us to believe in his existence and that it's possible, but that he is also far enough away so that we don't have certainty and must continue striving and seeking for him, which can lead to our progress spiritually if we hope. God's existence to us on earth is a possibility, and we can choose hope or not. We can also choose to fear that there is evil to come in the future because this too is possible. This can positively rouse us to seek to live righteously, because we all innately have a moral conscience that convicts us that righteousness shall be rewarded and evil should be punished. God's potential existence can also lead us to fear if we perceive that we are not in right standing with this God. So it is important that we not just believe in God, but that we strive towards him and do everything we can to be in right standing with him, believing in hope that there is a good to come in eternity for those who love and are faithful to what is good, to God. This is what it means to hope all things. But in love to hope all things signifies the lover's relationship to other men, that in relation to them, hoping for them, he continually keeps possibility open with infinite partiality for his possibility of the good. Consequently, he hopes in love that possibility is present at every moment, that the possibility of the good is present for the other person, and that the possibility of the good means more and more glorious advancement in the good, from perfection to perfection, or resurrection from downfall, or salvation from lostness, and thus beyond. When we hope all things in a state of godly love towards others, we are always holding out hope for the possibility of their good, the possibility that they can become better, that they can rise after a degrading downfall, and most importantly, that they can become redeemed if they are lost. This is what it means to hope in the possibility of the good. The despairing person also knows what lies in possibility, and yet he dismisses possibility. For to dismiss possibility is precisely what despair means, or even more accurately, he rashly presumes to suppose the impossibility of the good. Here again it is shown that the possibility of the good is more than possibility, for when one presumes to suppose the impossibility of the good, the possible dies completely for him. The fearful person does not suppose the impossibility of the good. He fears the possibility of evil. Someone who is lost in despair dismisses that there is a different possible future, Or even more so, they assume that there is no possible good that they can expect in the future. When we assume that there is no possible good in the future, we completely abandon possibility itself, and thereby lose all hope and all positive striving. I'll say that again. When we assume that there is no possible good in the future, we completely abandon possibility itself, and thereby lose all hope and all positive striving. Someone who lives in fear does not think that good in the future is impossible for them. It's just that they choose to live in fear of the possibility that there is evil or suffering in their future. This also applies to our hope or despair in the future for someone else. When we truly have hope in God, we hope in good for the present and future, no matter what may come. No one can hope unless he also loves. He cannot hope for himself without loving, for they are eternally inseparable. But if he loves, he also hopes for others. In the same degree to which he hopes for himself, precisely in the same degree he hopes for others. Because precisely in the degree to which he hopes for himself, in precisely the same degree, he is a lover. The person who loves, who believes in love, who believes that good exists, has hope not just for themselves, but also for others. God is love. God is eternal. Love is eternal. The eternal contains possibility. The one who loves has the eternal in them, and thereby has possibility also, and can believe in a different future, a good future, different from the one they or someone else currently exists in. The one who loves has hope for themselves and others. Therefore, when a man cannot understand what the lover understands, it must be because he is not a lover. It must be because there is something which prevents him from keeping possibility pure. For if possibility is kept pure, everything is possible. While in love, he chooses the possibility of the good or hopes for the other person. It must be because there is something which weighs him down and gives him a tendency to expect the other person's discouragement, downfall, perdition. This down drag is worldliness, the earthly passions of the unloving mind. For in itself, worldliness is heavy, ponderous, sluggish, slack, dispirited, dejected, and will not entertain the possible, least of all the possibility of the good, either for its own sake or for another's. There is a shrewdness which, almost with pride, presumes to have a special elemental knowledge of the shabby side of existence, that everything finally ends in wretchedness. How could such a person hope at all, at the very last moment, for another human being? He who early in the day already had begun to expect and be prepared for the other's downfall. There is an evil eye. How could an evil eye be able to catch a glimpse of the possibility of the good? There is envy, which is quick to give up a person, and yet does not really give him up in the sense of letting him go. No, it is ready right and early to assist in his downfall. There is a cowardly, fearful, small-mindedness, which does not have the courage to hope anything for itself. How could it possibly hope for the good of others? For this, it is too small and too closely related to envy. There is a worldly, vain mentality which would die of blushing and shame if it should go through the experience of making a mistake, of being fooled, of becoming a laughingstock, the most terrible of all horrors, by having hoped for another person something which was not fulfilled. In this way, the worldly vain mentality protects itself by hoping nothing at the right time, and considers hoping all things in love to be infinitely foolish and infinitely laughable. But right here, worldly vanity makes its mistake. For what is foolish is never infinite. This was the very consolation of one who, this was the very consolation of one who, while he lived, had to put up with so much of the world's foolishness that he could always say, It is not infinite. No, thank God, it has an end. Nor is experience right in maintaining that the greatest shrewdness is in not hoping everything for another person. Yet, of course, experience is right. Otherwise, it would have to learn and teach how worthless it is to love others for the sake of one's own advantage. And only to the extent that one does this is it imprudent to hope all things. When all of these, this shrewdness, this anger and bitterness, this envy and malice, this cowardly, fearful small-mindedness, this worldly, vain mentality, when all these or some of them are in a man, and to the degree in which they are, then love is not present, and to the same degree is diminished in him. But if there is less love in him, there is also less of the eternal in him. But if there is less of the eternal in him, there is also less possibility. It is worldliness that twists someone's mind and makes them unloving, making them focus only on the wretchedness of life with all of its pride, lust, and self-absorption. James, Jesus' brother, says, quote, "What is the source of quarrels and conflicts among you? Is not the source your pleasures that wage war in your members? You lust and do not have, so you commit murder. You are envious and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel." Unquote. Of course, if this is what someone's mind is centered on, then they cannot hope anything good for someone else because that other person is seen as a competitor for the things they lust after. To the same degree worldliness is in someone, to the same degree love is not present within them. The less love is in them, the less of possibility, which is why unloving people make no progress in life that actually means anything. They remain wallowing in the mud of their vanity and lust, and become nothing more than a half-sentient creature of instinct that cannot hope anything else for themselves or others. Even if the lover did not succeed in doing the slightest additional thing for another, did not succeed in bringing any other gift at all, he still brings the best gift. He brings hope. Worldly comprehension does not discern that love is by no means a third by itself, but is the middle term. Without love, no hope for one himself. With love, hope for all others, and to the degree in which one hopes for himself, to that same degree one hopes for others, for to the same degree one loves. Yeah, now he's going to go on and talk about cleverness here. What the world most highly and unanimously honors is cleverness, or acting cleverly. But to act cleverly is precisely the most contemptuous of all. To act cleverly is basically compromise, whereby one undeniably gets farthest along in the world, wins the world's goods and favor, the world's honor, because the world and the world's favor are, eternally understood, compromise. When the hope was not full, and he's talking about like hoping for worldly things here. He says, when the hope is not fulfilled, it may become apparent in one's bitterness and despair how firmly one was attached to that for which it is a shame to hope. If the hope is fulfilled, the shame would perhaps not become apparent, but it would nevertheless remain essentially the same. So he's going to talk, and he talks about true hope, and he says to hope is essentially and eternally related to the good. Therefore, one can never be put to shame by hoping. Here he talks about how we feel shame when we calculate or evaluate others incorrectly, by not being clever or mistrustful enough. He says that by acting cleverly in the world, one can get the farthest in the world. But this shrewdness does not believe in the good of others and does not love. How can love then hope all things, but not be put to shame, as the scriptures say? He says that shame lies precisely in what one hopes, not in whether one mistakenly chose to believe in the good of someone else. Hope is related to what is good, to the eternal. So one who hopes cannot be put to shame by it, even if their hope seems to be misguided. To give up another man is in itself a dishonor, no matter what the actual outcome is. One can be put to shame by hoping evil for a person, and it becomes apparent that everything turns out well for him. A vindictive individual says sometimes that he hopes to God that vengeance will fall upon the hated one. But in truth, this is not to hope, but to hate. And it is impudent to call this a hope. It is blasphemy to wish to make God an accomplice in hating. The vindictive individual is not put to shame because what he expected does not happen, but he is and was put to shame no matter what happens. Shame is found in hoping the wrong thing, hoping for some worldly desire, or by giving up hope for someone or desiring their downfall when it turns out they become saved or everything works out well for them. Hoping that God brings vengeance upon someone instead of saving them is to make God a partner in your hate. To do this is blasphemous. And yeah, I wrote up there, shame is found in hoping in the wrong thing, hoping for some worldly desire by giving up hope for someone or desiring their downfall. And that's whether or not it turns out that they become saved or everything works out well for them. So whatever happens to the person, you're put to shame either way if you desire their downfall instead of desiring the good of their soul, that they be saved. So whether or not they become saved or not, you're put to shame either way because of what you actually desired. That's what he's saying. In eternity, everyone will be compelled to understand that it is not the result which determines honor and shame, but the expectation itself. Even if someone hopes for another's reformation and salvation, and the person perishes without repentance, being eternally lost, the one who hoped for them could never be put to shame, because God, the Eternal, judges shame by what we hoped for, not if it succeeded in being fulfilled. All those who put their hope in the unloving, unspiritual things of the world are already put to shame, whether or not they succeeded in acquiring them. But the one who, in love, hopes what is truly good for themselves and others will never be put to shame, not in life or in eternity. No, in eternity, there is only one mistake. Through the fulfillment of one's picayunishness. No, let me reread that. No, in eternity, there is only one mistake. Through the fulfillment of one's picayunish, envious, hateful expectations to be excluded from blessedness. And in eternity, no mockery shall wound the lover, saying that he was foolish enough to make himself ridiculous by hoping all things. For in eternity, the cry of the mocker is not heard, even less than in the grave, because in eternity are heard only the voices of the blessed. In eternity, no envy shall touch the wreath of honor, which the lover bears with honor. No, envy does not stretch that far, however far it may stretch. It does not stretch from hell to paradise.